AEW is so boring with booking so bad it's ridiculous. Once a month, the Rasslin company graces our presence with a bunch of great wrestling on a pay-per-view, but as a weekly TV show tasked with developing meaningful characters, AEW sucks. AEW spent a year booking Hangman Page as its great white hope. Not only did he lose the world title shortly thereafter, he lost his ability to ever even challenge for it, which is the same mistake they made with former top AEW babyface Cody Rhodes before he became QB1 of the entire fucking wrestling business. At the time, QB1A was Britt Baker. Britt was the golden girl of AEW before she disappeared. AEW had a women's wrestler who was also a dentist. This is a type of unique human interest story that doesn't just fall out of the sky. But unfortunately for Britt, and many like her, Tony Khan has a soft spot for the most generic wrestlers on his squad as long as they can do moves. Kyle Fletcher is what you start off with in a create a wrestler mode before you actually do anything to it. I don't give a shit about any AEW character in 2026 because over the years we've been trained to believe that they'll either be shipped to Guantanamo Bay or signed with WWE. That is if they're good enough to go there. There's so much wrestling for the sake of wrestling in AEW, it's almost impossible to care about any of the stories they're trying to tell. The storyteller-in-chief, Tony Khan, is more of a fantasy booker who can't be bothered with decent stories. Instead, Tony just wants to watch men compete in fake wrestling matches and, say it with me, kiss Dave Meltzer on the mouth. Today, we're going to talk about all the reasons AEW's booking is trash and why instead of thriving during WWE's annual post-WrestleMania lull, AEW and its cracker graps just feel lifeless. Subscribe in Swahili. WWE has been a creative conundrum in 2026. Between its build to WrestleMania 42, night one of WrestleMania 42, beating Obafemi shortly after his biggest career win at WrestleMania 42, and the stagnation of top stars like Liv, Dom, and LA Knight, WWE's booking has missed the mark. WWE is loaded with stars, both old and new, but they're somehow making chicken shit from chicken salad. Thankfully, there's an alternative company that has picked up the pace while WWE lags in the distance, and that company is AAA. AAA is on fire right now after the greatest match of the WWE era when El Grande Americano beat the original, who unmasked as Chad Gable. Of course, because AEW ruined most of their homegrown talent and can't build shit from scratch, these culture vultures are putting feelers out for Chad Gable to save the RC Cola of wrestling. This is just like how AEW put feelers out for the New Day when they parted ways with WWE. That's because, more times than not, AEW fails miserably when it comes to building a real, personal relationship between its stars and its fans. That's the most important part of any weekly television show, regardless of the genre, and it's a glaring weakness for AEW. It has been for years. The biggest selling point for AEW is its monthly pay-per-views filled with technical wrestling matches between two interchangeable pros. After that, unless MJF is champion, TV ratings and attendance are in constant decline because emotional investment in AEW talent is terminally temporary. Basically, people like AEW for the same reasons you pay for hookers. These hoes are very technically sound in the art of professional sex work. They be twerking, they can make it clap, they can click their clear heels, they can do reverse cowgirl like they're up for an Oscar in a sexy western. But you don't even know what Jasmine's favorite color is, do you? You're not going to tell your wife and kids about Jasmine. This is AEW in a nutshell. A pro wrestling brothel that leans on technical prowess more than it does emotional connections. That's why after a lot of these great pay-per-views, people forget about why they even cared by the time Dynamite airs. Kevin Knight turned heel at the end of an exciting AEW prostitute pay-per-view at Double or Nothing, but 2 Dynamites later, Kevin Knight just randomly joined the Callis family like every other heel in that company. WWE creative is in a funk, but AEW doesn't have a creative bone in its body. Meanwhile, I've rewatched the Noche de los Grandes main event almost as many times as I've replayed the Iceman trilogy. AAA's Noche de los Grandes was one of the most well-booked shows I've ever seen. It featured a main event that is easily the match of the year to this point, and I don't think anything's going to touch it. That very fact scares Dave Meltzer to death because not only does he have an AEW fetish, but the only Lucha Libre company he's contractually allowed to glaze is the AEW-affiliated CMLL. And them Spanish niggas haven't come close to doing anything as good as AAA in Big 2026. That's why their tickets are so cheap. You might as well be going to a Rick Ross concert in 26. Noche de los Grandes was headlined by a mask versus mask match between two dueling El Grande Americanos. The original versus El Grande II. It was a story about love, friendship, prestige, what it truly means to be a Mexican, and it was all narrated by the complementary art of Lucha Libre. Because if there isn't a compelling story attached to a wrestling match, it's just two masked men doing figure skating without the blades. El Grande II put his sacred mask on the line after the original ran afoul of his girlfriend, Andrea Basarte. The original violated fan favorite in El Grande's BFF Pimpinella. He attacked a blind comedian. No, not Rob Schneider. He just doesn't see humor because that guy sucks. Rob Schneider has a special that you can watch right now on Dry Bar Comedy, but don't bother, it sucks. Watch my Dry Bar special instead. It's called Little Jokes and it's brilliant. Anyway, the original El Grande got Andrea Basarte fired in storyline, and AAA went the extra step and worked the dirt sheet media with a dubious report of Ludwig Kaiser fighting a pro-ICE bigot after a makeout session in an elevator. I don't know whether or not this is true, but the wrestling media is so bad at what they do, I'm convinced they got worked yet again. The story of Los Grandes Americanos was explained perfectly. I'm a casual viewer of AAA, and I went out of my way to watch this match. The video package told me everything I needed to know, and despite all the action, interference, cameos, and craziness of that match, I had zero questions for anything that happened. In fact, these days, I'm more invested in AAA than I am in AEW. This isn't like buying some Kyle Fletcher hooker from the streets of Jacksonville. This is real love. I swear to God, this is going to be why I finally learned fluent Spanish, porque me encanta AAA. Los Grandes Americanos took us on a ride that culminated in Ludwig Kaiser becoming the de facto mayor of Mexico. In fact, through this instant classic, I learned about one of the most heartwarming aspects of Latino culture. Because in the words of El Grande Americano, a real Mexican is born wherever the hell he damn well pleases, as opposed to YNs who are mostly born in ski masks outside of an NBA Youngboy concert. AAA made 2 stars that night. El Grande Americano, who's basically a lock to win the AAA Mega Championship at Triple Mania, and Chad Gable, who revealed his true identity and even came off as a bigger babyface than El Grande Americano, which is the biggest praise you can get in AAA right now. Of course AEW wants Chad Gable now. He's the type of real, relatable good guy that Tony Khan and his emotionally bankrupt booking strategy does not know how to create. AEW's Will Ospreay storyline is actually not half bad to me. But not only does it feel forced, it's too little, too late. AEW is trying with Will Ospreay, I can tell, but they have a long history of killing off top babyfaces like Cody Rhodes, Hangman Adam Page, and even Wardlow. They just killed off Darby Allin after a crash and burn world title run defined by low television ratings. In fact, Dynamite's ratings sank every week Darby Allin was world champion, with the exception of the go-home show for Double or Nothing. Darby winning the title was not the culmination of a long-term angle about the power of the human spirit, but rather a shotgun finish where they beat the hottest guy in the company because they were in Darby Allin's hometown. Of course people stopped watching after that, because on short notice, AEW put the big belt on a man with the same stockings as the hose on Figueroa Street. Given all the Latino culture in AAA and the black culture in African NXT, which is now carried over to WWE, watching AEW sometimes feels like eating vanilla ice cream for dessert. The AEW world title lineage in 2026 went from Cracker Max to Ofe Allen, back to Cracker Max, then it'll go to Cracker Kenny in Canada, and then eventually to White Boy William. It's about to be an avalanche in AEW, and I don't have a problem with a secondary company being a white alternative, especially with black people dominating the wrestling business. In fact, I support white alternatives. Seriously. Listen, this is America. And when America gets too black, or even when it's not white enough for some people, white mass shootings and insurrections go crazy. So these colonizers need an alternative before these crackers get to clapping. That way, black churches can pray in peace. So again, I completely understand having a white alternative in a world full of killer crackers and homicidal honkies, but at least give their story some life. Will Ospreay is learning the dark arts of submission wrestling from the Death Riders, so he's gonna armbar his way to a world title. Hooray. Okay, that's a start, but why should I care? All I know about this Will Ospreay character is that he has a bad neck. So what? Every flip guy in AEW has a neck made of bones more flimsy than Jay-Z's wig. I've never been too high on the Whitepool Combat Club, so you're gonna have to do better than the Rocky III storyline with skinheads. I don't even have to tell you that the women's division is a mess, even with Mercedes Mone back in the fold. Last time we saw Mercedes, she was Ultimo Mone and engaged in a long-term storyline for being a belt collector. The long term of it all was the first red flag that AEW was gonna fuck it up. Mercedes returned with no belts and no explanations of where, why, or how she lost any of them. This is another example of AEW punting on a long-term storyline, just like they punted on Hangman Page, just like they punted on Darby Allin, just like they punted on Jungle Jack Perry when he was the hottest guy in AEW after his real-life feud with CM Punk. AEW has punted on so many promising stories, and they're so obsessed with recruiting WWE talent, maybe they should sign Pat McAfee. AEW lives and dies on the strength of its wrestling. They're not going to give you a video package featuring their humans or any reason to care about their humans beyond the fact that somebody is going to do a space flying tiger drop. No emotion, no heart, just wrestling. And that's why a tertiary promotion in Mexico is kicking AEW's ass right now, and they didn't even have to sacrifice quality wrestling because the Los Grandes Americanos mask versus mask match was better than anything I saw on Double or Nothing, which after Noche de los Grandes is the second best pay-per-view of the year. Tony Khan has no time for your emotional investment, and that's why AEW will always have a ceiling. Tony Khan learned about wrestling from message boards and newsletters, both of which create a one-way street to lifeless consumption and analysis. This is the first time I'm sharing this, but Tony Khan used to be a junior correspondent for the Wrestling Observer newsletter, which is like being a sideline reporter for the Cleveland Browns the year they went 0-16, or like being an entry-level hooker in a 4chan whorehouse. AEW is a lifeless, forgettable stable of proverbial whores who will scratch your itch for professional wrestling and do little else. No different from the prostitutes that most married men are renting right now. Most of AEW's top stars are either rentals from New Japan or rentals from WWE, because that's what AEW really is, the video rental store of pro wrestling. And if they go all in with that philosophy, they'll be broker than Blockbuster real quick. I mentioned Darby Allin losing the AEW world title and how his run was a ratings flop, and to hear all about that, check out this video.